everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Samantha Anderson. I am a freelance artist and teacher hoping to inspire creativity. If you would like more videos like these, please take a second to like and subscribe down below. It really helps in the algorithm of YouTube to help get my videos seen to more people. If you want to receive notifications of when I go live, please make sure to hit the bell and choose all notifications. If you have any questions during or after the class, make sure to pop a comment down below and I will answer it as soon as I can. I'll be leaving timestamps down below so you can skip ahead to the start of class, but I will be sharing announcements as well as supplies, so make sure to stick around for that. If interested in learning more about my classes, please follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and feel free to check me out on Patreon where I teach exclusive classes to those who support me. In Patreon, I also give traceables for all of my live classes, including this one. Lastly, if you would like to share your work after class with me and others who painted along with us, please head over to Facebook as I have an artist community where you can share your finished painting with us. I'll leave links for all of that in the description box below. Thanks for joining me, and let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome back to another life class. I am excited for this one. This is a part of our I don't want to say it's a Bob Ross series because it's not oils, but it is a part of just a simplistic landscape type of painting where we take very simplistic just features of mountain and maybe some lake in there with trees, pathways, things like that. We can fit in clouds or birds and bushes and things like that to create just a very lovely simplistic landscape. So that's what we're doing today. Today we're doing a little bit more of a winterscape. I know it's like practically summer, but it kind of cools me down just looking at it, right? But I'm excited for this one. I hope you are too. If you are new to the channel, welcome. Please make sure that if you like this content, please make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss a video. I know I probably already mentioned that in that opening, but it really does help in the algorithm of YouTube. So make sure to do that, as well as go over on Facebook because that's where I post most of my content, as well as upcoming classes, sneak peeks, polls, all that sort. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go over some supplies and things that you may need in this class. There's not a lot of supplies in terms of paint colors, so there's just not a lot of colors in this. There's like probably like 4, maybe 5 colors, if that, depending on what you have. So it should be a really fun and quick class, but obviously I'm not going to speed through it. I do want to give you some tips and tricks on how to create really fun and easy not only trees, but your mountains and all that jazz. We'll go over it all in class, but let me go over some supplies. I'll go over some Patreon stuff. That's what we're doing in Patreon right now, which is just another way to support me as an artist, as a teacher, and then we will get painting, okay? Lastly, say hi in the comments if you haven't. If you're painting live, I'd love to know where you're from, where you're painting. If you're painting with a friend or anything like that, let me know in the comments. And I'm going to go ahead and find my pink because I forgot my pink. Okay. I have all my paints out from the last class that I just did. But yeah, that should be it. If you don't have a pink, you could use a red. There's not much. It's just like right here. And if you don't have pink, you could use an orange, or you could use just white. It doesn't have to be a color, or you could use purple. That would work too. Just to give any sort of little color back here. I would be careful about doing anything too close to the opposite side of the color wheel of blue, because then you might get a muddy brown in there. So be careful of that. So I would do a pink or a purple or a red. Hello, Tanya. Welcome in. Okay, I think I have all the colors I need. I think there's just 4 colors in this one, unless you have another blue that you want to use. Okay, we'll just go with that. Okay, so let's go over some supplies. I do have a traceable for this if you're just like, I don't want to figure out composition or anything like that. If you want a very simplistic just way to get things on your canvas, I do have a traceable for this class. I will be teaching kind of where to place what if you want to give that a try. This is a beginner class, so I will be doing that for you guys. But if you're just like, nope, I don't want to do it, I do have a traceable available. I have it in a 9 by 12 and 11 by 14. This is the 9 by 12, so it doesn't really fit this canvas, but if you have another size canvas, you can let me know on that post in Patreon. I already posted it in the live chat, as well as also in the description of this event. So if you want that, it's only $5 for the month, and you'll get access to not only every traceable within this month, but all traceables that I've ever done. So if you've been eyeing other classes and maybe you want to snag a couple for some other classes that I've already done, you can also do that. And it is a membership, but you can cancel anytime. You can only pay the $5, grab a couple and then leave, or you can stay and support me. So it's totally up to you. Do we need a sponge for the mountains? Looks like there might be a sponge. This photo specifically I did on my iPad using Procreate, so I haven't really been able to find a good representation of what a palette knife looks like in my program, so this was the best that I could do in terms of an example. If you wanted to use a sponge, I would make sure that it's a dry sponge with like big pores, and that you could sponge that on there, just making sure not to cover up all of the, I probably covered up too much of the background of the dark in it, but I'm going to be using a palette knife. If you would like to use a palette knife, that is totally fine. If you want to use something else that you like to use for mountains, feel free to do that. This is really, all of my classes, I'm really encouraging kind of a choose your own adventure, and if you have something that you like to use that you already found that you enjoy using, or a technique that you use, do that. A lot of my classes are for beginners, so I like to give kind of just like the basics. Yeah, so I'll be using a palette knife or two, depending on how it goes. Okay, so that's my traceable. If interested in that, you'll get access to literally every other traceable. You'll get access to quick tip videos and lots of other goodies. For the colors, so colors are very, very basic today. I have a phthalo blue. You could also use ultramarine blue. You'll get a little bit more of a cooler effect with things. I typically like the warmth that a phthalo blue gives, even though it is kind of a cooler, wintry, I don't know. I like phthalo blue. I like my teals and my greens. So use whatever blue you have on hand. Use whatever blue you want. You do not ever have to use exactly what I use. It is your painting. Use what you want to use, okay? So I have a phthalo blue. I have black and white, obviously, and then I have a pink. I also have a cold gray, just in case. I don't know, I might use it, I might not. But I have it just out. I feel like that would be a nice like in between, so I don't have to mix things or whatever. I have it out just in case. But yeah, if you don't have a cold gray, you just mix your blues and your white and maybe a tiny bit of black. Let me go grab my water because my throat is like super dry right now. It's like looking around for my water, and my kids, my daughter, she's like almost 18 months, and she loves to come in and grab my water and then not return it. How could she? She loves my water. It's always my water. Specifically the one that I keep in my room, away from the kids. She always comes in and grabs it, but that's okay. All right, so that's the colors, and don't be fooled by the bottles. Even though they are in bottles, they are Hippie Crafter acrylics, and they are full body acrylics. They are not craft acrylics. That's something to note. If you have craft acrylics, then when I add water to mine, don't add water to yours, because yours is already in like a fluid, liquid state. These are not. These are thicker. Okay, let's go over brushes. Brushes, these are the standard brushes that I use in almost every class. So I have them available if I need them. I don't know if we'll use all of them, but I have them. Again, I have them available if I want to use them. I have a large filbert that I use for the backgrounds. If you have a flat brush or a bigger brush that you want to use for background, depending on what size canvas, feel free to use that. That's fine. I have a smaller to medium filbert. I like my filberts. I have 2 round brushes, one kind of a medium, and then a smaller one. This medium one, you could probably see that it's a little bit frayed. I don't know if you can see that. It's a little bit frayed, and the reason for that is because this is my kind of texture cloud painting brush, and I tend to go in circles, which I go against the flow. So try to get a brush that, at least for the clouds and for some of the texture or dry brushing effect, get a brush that you don't necessarily, not that you don't care about, but that you're willing to kind of mess up the bristles, because it will over time mess up the bristles. I've been using this for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, 5 months. And it's definitely like, I would not use this if I want to get clean straight lines. So just keep that in mind. And then I have a smaller brush, and then other ones that I keep on hand are a liner brush. And then for this class specifically, I'm gonna have on hand a hog bristle fan brush. You don't have to have this on hand, but it might be fun for the trees. Again, use whatever you want for the trees. You can do, I like to use 2 different brushes for trees, specifically these style of trees where it's kind of just like, I don't know, a little bit more freeing and not necessarily super duper realistic. I have this filbert that I've had for a long time, so it kind of frays out a little bit. It gives me a nice little, it separates a lot, so I do a lot of dabbing with it. And then I also have a hog bristle, which is, it just means that it's not nylon, it means that they're stiffer. So those are the brushes that I have. Mop brush for clouds. If you want to use the mop brush for clouds, you can. I don't have a mop brush. I've never used a mop brush before, so I wouldn't be able to give you any details on that one specifically. I've seen them. Aren't those like, mop brushes are like really like loose, right? I feel like I'm very uneducated in mop brushes right now because I don't have one. I don't use one. Okay, so yeah, but those are the brushes we're using today, and then I do have a couple. I have a couple palette knives. I have one small one, and I mostly use that for my mixing on my canvas. In all my beginner classes, I really, I can't stress this enough. Mix your colors ahead of time, because that will really help in the blending process and figuring out how to blend on the canvas. If you've never blended on the canvas before and you go in with just like straight paint out of the tubes, you can have a really hard time blending. So we're going to mix probably 3 colors for the sky, and we're going to pre-mix all of those, okay? So that's what I use the small one for. We'll probably use a combination of both of these for the for the mountains. I don't know why my throat is so dry right now. Okay. Those are the brushes. Other things that you may or may not want, depending on your preference, is maybe you want a ruler to get a straight line, or tape to get a straight line. You can have either of those, or you can just eyeball it and be like, that's straight enough, depending on your preference. Yeah, and then I have water, paper towel, palette, and then the size of canvas. I usually go over this in the beginning. Size of canvas I'm using is an 11 by 14. I use that. That's pretty standard for all my classes, is an 11 by 14. If you are using a different size, just be mindful that if it's bigger, you might fall behind, and if it's smaller, you might be ahead, which can affect my instruction, because my instruction will be behind you, and then things might dry by the time I get to where you are. So just kind of keep that in mind. But yeah, that is pretty much it. If you have any questions, now's the time to answer them, or ask them so I can answer them. Let me go over just a couple announcements, what we did last week, as well as what's going on in Patreon. Again, with the traceable, that's available in my Patreon, but I'm not using it today. It's there if you need it, and it's not cheating. It's okay if you want to use it, but I will be going over kind of what we're going to be doing. Okay. All right. Last week, so while you guys figure all that out, last week we did this beautiful daisy with a cute little ladybug. If you like spring and flowers and all that jazz, go paint this one. It was a lot of fun. I always love bokeh and the effect that it gives. It's just a very interesting background to me. Some people think it's cheating to use the sponges. I think it's a tool to use, just like I would a ruler. Is it a cheating to use a ruler to get a straight line? I don't think so. It's a tool to use, just like our sponges. So I enjoy the process, and it's really, really easy, even for kids. It's really fun. So if you want to do this class, make sure to go paint it. We did that last week. It is free on YouTube. Other classes that we have done this month in Patreon, we did this beautiful cat, very realistic cat. And I also gave some tips on how to recreate this with your own picture, your own photo, maybe change the colors depending on the eyes and all of that stuff. So make sure that you go in and do that. If you are interested in painting pet portraits or just a cat in general, this was a lot of fun. It was a lot easier than even I anticipated it. Just all the texture. We did a lot of dry brushing, so if you've never done that before, it was a really good class for that. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. So that is in my Patreon at the $10 tier, and you'll also get access to everything else in that tier, which is like 52 or 53 other tutorials, if you join that class. And then lastly, last week we finished this beautiful seascape with the Ireland Cliffs. That was the name of it, Ireland Cliffs. We worked a lot on the sea, the texture in the mountains, as well as mostly we worked on probably the last hour and a half. We worked on the grass, just the grass, and it was a lot of fun. We got through it. It was a lot of fun. And then we also did a rainbow. So if you've never done a rainbow in a painting, to get it look kind of realistic and very light, this is the class for you. It was a lot of fun, and I was hesitant about putting it in, but I did want to teach it during the class, so I ended up putting it in anyways, and I really enjoyed the process, as well as I think it came out really, really well. So if you want to paint this is at the $20 level. The Cobalt level, which is the $20 level, we go through a picture, painting it week by week, and you get a little bit more in depth with all of the instruction. So depending on what you want, if you want just like one tutorial a month, you could do the $10 tier, or you could do the $20 tier. You'd also get access to those classes, but then you could paint with me week by week. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on, and I'm excited. Let's see, is next week is, let me just see what we're doing next week, just before we get started, just so sometimes I forget to say what's going on next week. Yes, next week is our watercolor class. So we're painting a Rosa Caninas, which is dog rose. Caninas. I am not Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish, so I'm sorry for butchering that. But we are doing dog roses in watercolor. So if you have never painted watercolors before, that's going to be a fun class. So stay tuned for that next week. But for this week, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, we are going to get out a blue and white. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to get out my cool gray and just do it with that so I don't have to mix stuff. But if you're getting out just your blue and your white, just use mostly white and a little bit of blue. This is just so that you can get some water, mix it in, get it really, really wet and liquidy so that you can draw in your, you can draw in your background, okay? All right, so when I'm looking at this, this painting, whenever you're trying to transfer something just by looking at it, you want to try to find the similarities between what's around it. So I always try to mentally block it off in like blocks in like 4 corners. And what it looks to me is that the water line is just above half. So if this is half, I'm going to do my water line just above half. Okay? And if you want, you can do this in a pencil, however you want to do it. I had a red pencil on me, so I did it in red. Don't do it in red. You don't have to do it in red. And then you could paint it on there. I'm just going to paint over it just so you guys can see it. And it's just estimate, okay? Make sure you have a good amount of water so that it dries really fast, okay? And then after that, I'm going to go to the top of the mountain. So the mountain, the top of the first mountain, if you look at where the middle of the canvas is, it's just off to the side a little bit and not quite at the top, okay? And then they come down about that much. And there's one, if I'm looking at this, about halfway down from that is where this one is, maybe a little bit taller. And if you want to make mountains that look different than mine, go for it. Again, it is your painting and you're allowed to do that. Just so that these aren't the same height, I'm going to do this one a little bit taller. And then I'm going to come up and do a little hill over here. You might not see it. You're probably not going to see it, but that's okay. Well, I'll know it's there. Oh, actually, I'm not going to do that because this is where a lot of that light comes in, so I kind of want that to stay light. So if you do something that you're like, oh, I don't want that, you can take a brush that's clean, get some water, and kind of whisk away a lot of it. But we'll be going over it with like pink and a lot of white, so it'll get covered up, believe me. All right, so now that I have this, I'm gonna put in my path. This is kind of the main path. That's kind of the lake. The little dip on the lake is a little bit over here. And I want enough lake that I can see that it's a lake. If there's not enough water, then I'm going to be like, what is that over there? So I know that this is about where the first tree is. And it also lines up with a little bit off to the side of my first mountain. So that all lines up. So sometimes like cross-checking things and being like, okay, this is where I think it is, doesn't line up with other things that I've already put on the canvas. And that can also help. And the bushes come out to about here. There's the bushes-ish. And this is also the area that you can make adjustments. So like if you need to make an adjustment, that is totally fine. Just like I made an adjustment up here. Most of this is going to be covered up. I mean, all of what we're putting in is going to be covered up, but so I'm just kind of widening this area. It's kind of the darkest area. Just so I can do anything that makes sense for you so that you can visualize where things are going. Like if it makes more sense to just kind of do this, like then do that, do whatever you need to do. Like there's darkness over here, you want to put that in. Like this is kind of the drawing stage, so you're kind of pre-painting it a little bit. There's a bush right here in the corner. It's a pretty big bush. Can kind of go a little bigger. There's a tree that kind of comes here. And there's more bushes. And then that tree has a friend. I really enjoy this process because you kind of get all your ideas out. Like if you're wanting to switch something up, or you're drawing it out for the first time, like let's say you don't have this to look at, you can get your ideas out of your head and look at the composition and be like, okay, do I like that? Does it look good? Are things in the right place? And if they're not, then you can adjust it before you start putting in your paint. Because once you start putting your paint, then you have to like put in more layers to cover something up or to rework something. You have to change your colors or whatever it may be. By doing this, it's really easy to change it at this stage. And I enjoy doing this process so much because it gives so much freedom when you're painting it, to just knowing that whatever you came up with, it's gonna look good because you went in with the plan, versus when you're painting still trying to figure out the composition. And sometimes that can be like, I don't want to have to think about the composition when I'm painting. I want to just be able to paint and just focus on what I'm doing and not trying to figure out where things are going. That's just me. I like to go in with a little bit more of a plan. So that's kind of how I do things. So we made this opening off to the side. That's where the main, that's why the mountain is a little bit off to the side, because the opening and all the openings here, and then you have the walkway that's kind of creating this like draw into the painting. It's giving movement into there. So that's what we're doing. Okay, I did put in the little tiny trees at the, I think they're bushes. Trees, bushes. Yeah. All right. Who's ready? Is everybody ish ready to go? And note that these trees are going to get bigger as they go down. So they're going to fill out a little bit more of this space. All right, let's go ahead and get out our white and blue. If you already got out your white and blue, then we're going to go ahead and mix that together. I'm going to get out my white, blue, and my pink. Now, I would say that most of the sky is white, even though it looks blue. When you're putting stuff in, when you are mixing stuff, it's going to be mostly white. So I'm going to grab a little bit of white, a little bit more white, and a tiny bit of blue. So just grab a tiny, tiny bit of blue and see where that takes you. And I think even mine might be a little bit too dark. I'm going to add a little bit more white. Remember that when you're doing the top, if you do wrap the canvas, and what I mean by wrap the canvas is painting the sides and the tops and the bottoms. If you do wrap the canvas, make sure that you have enough paint that you can go over the top with it. So you have a little bit of blue. I'm going to make a white, so I'm gonna wipe this off. Grab some pink. Not gonna need much. Just gonna grab a tiny bit of pink. And this is really just for this kind of section over here and a little tiny bit over here. Alright, so I have a little bit of pink. Now what I'm going to do, now theoretically in the future you don't have to do this if you are really good at mixing and blending and all that stuff. You don't need to mix these colors together. You can just mix it on the canvas. But if you are new and you have troubles with mixing or you're not really sure how to go about it, mix these two colors together to create a third in-between color, and that will help when you're putting it on. When you're putting the paint on the canvas, it will help with that process, okay? So I'm going to grab just a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of pink, a little bit of blue, and mix this together. And I'm kind of creating it's almost like periwinkle, in between color. That is going to be that mixing, okay? For this blue, I think I am going to add a little bit of, I'm going to make a fourth color just to get a little bit darker on the top if I want to, because I don't want to pull from the straight blue. That's a mistake that I've done too many times. It's like, oh, I want it just a little bit darker, so I go into the dark blue and it hasn't been pre-mixed, but like maybe something's drying already and it ends up becoming a bad idea. So having just a little bit of a darker blue to pull from already ready, you can just pull from that. The other option is just to wait and don't put it on yet and just pre-mix just like on your brush. On the palette you can pre-mix just in your brush. Sometimes then you can have streaks of that blue in your brush and not realize it, and then you go to put it on the canvas and then there's streaks. So totally up to you. I like to have an array of colors already done. If you're painting in oils, then you don't have to worry about that because it stays wet for forever. But when you're painting with acrylics, you want to try to have those colors ready for when you need them, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my large filbert and I'm going to work on painting in this top part with my darkest blue. I have a little bit of water. It's like a string. This string was like hanging over. I painted it blue. And during this process, you don't want to work like super duper uber fast, but it is acrylics and we do want to be able to get all this on the canvas and be able to work with it a little bit before it starts drying. That's the goal. Okay, so we have a little bit of this. I'm going to put just a tad bit of this on the top. The darker your blue is, the more translucent it's going to be, because the lighter it is, the more white it's going to have. And the white is more opaque. All right, so now that I have that, I'm not gonna rinse my brush off. I'm just gonna go straight into that light blue. And I'm gonna go down about yay high, just like maybe like an inch. And you can see that it blends into that blue pretty nicely. Like you can't even really see a difference. And I'm gonna go all the way across. I'm gonna rinse out my brush just so that I can get all that blue out, because I want to go into my purple now. My kind of periwinkle purple. I'm gonna put it just below the blue. And I'm gonna blend up. So go all the way across it. Blend up. You can either come in back with the blue and then blend down. And then you can go into the pink. Again, putting that right below that purpley blue. And if you run out of color, just try to pre-make it again, like mix it again pretty quickly so that you can keep blending it. Alright, go ahead and rinse out your brush once you get something that you like and you think looks good. Try not to overwork it. It is just the background. Alright, once you rinse out your brush, I'm going to go ahead and go into my largest round brush. Peggy, hi Samantha, you're so sweet. I love your voice. Aw, thank you, Peggy. I was gonna say good to see you, but I can't see you. So good for you to be in the chat. Good to have you here. There we go. I'm gonna grab my round brush that I use for clouds, and I'm going to grab just a little bit of white. And there is a trick to this. If you get your paint and you try to get as much out of your brush as possible, I could just kind of twist it. We can have fun with this. So I'm going to start over here. If you've never done clouds with me before, they are so fun and you're going to fall in love with the process. So grab your brush. I'm going to grab just a little bit. I barely have anything on my brush, but if you want, you can start down a place where, you know, maybe you can start and practice on a place that you're going to cover it up. Okay, see what you're working with. I'm going to use this brush, create some fluffy clouds. And you can always come back with more white and make it darker, or like make it brighter. I'm just using the top of my brush to create really wispy clouds, kind of puffy clouds. And I do have the sun coming from the left side, so when you are doing your clouds, try to keep that in mind and make sure that it's consistent. Okay, make sure that your brightest parts are over on the left hand side. So I'm just kind of dabbing. Again, I'm not using a whole lot of paint on my brush. And dry brushing is like one of my favorite things, because you're able just to have so much control over what you're doing. So then I can come back in here. So I kind of have just this blob up here. I can come back in here with just my white and put in highlights of just white, of just where it's super bright, where the light is catching. Let me show you a close-up. That's what it looks close up. It doesn't look like much, but when you zoom back, you zoom away, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, you have like a ton of clouds right there. Our eyes really enjoy to like fill in the blanks. So when we see something, we're like, oh, those are clouds, and I see clouds. So we don't have to give it much before we just kind of gravitate towards it and see what we're supposed to see. All right, that is enough for me. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is we are going to make a dark kind of blackish blue to put on our whatchamacallits, our mountains. I don't know, this happened last time, like there was always one word, I think it was ocean or waves or something like that, that I just kept forgetting. Please let it not be mountains this time, because I'm gonna say mountains a lot, or snow. Like why does it do that? Mom brain. I blame it on mom brain. Okay. Let's go ahead and make our new color. Now I have a lot of blues in here that I don't want to waste, and while I might use them in a little bit, I don't know if they'll stay wet that long. So if you want to use those and incorporate those into your dark blue, you can. I don't know what I'm going to do. I may or may not. So I'm going to get out, I have a lot of blue. I'm going to get out some black. And this is going to cover up about 1/3 of your canvas. So keep that in mind. It's about 1/3 of your canvas. So you are going to need a good amount of paint. And we can also darken this up and make it our tree color too. So don't worry about wasting paint. So I'm just going to mix my black and my blue together. Okay. I think I'm gonna need more than this. So I'm gonna get my blue. That was a lot. Don't know if I'll need that much, but I can always use it for the trees. Alright, so I have a pretty dark blue here. I'm going to take this color and pretty much just put it over the whole background. And I might need to go darker. It might be too, no, I think it's fine. And my paint is naturally getting lighter as it gets a little bit thinner. So I'm okay with that. If you want to initiate that, then you can add some white. So I'm trying not to dilute the paint too much because I do want it to be dark. And you can see if I dilute it, then it becomes quite light. So that's why I'm going a little bit slower on this part. I apologize for having to move my head and canvas in the way I where my light is on my canvas. Whenever I do dark things, it's hard for me to see what's a reflection or what is like white canvas. All right, so now that we have that, I'm gonna rinse out my thing. I'm gonna go ahead and put in a first coat of this sea, or the lake, because I anticipate having to put in a second coat. So I'm just gonna put in a first coat, and I'm just using that light blue that we used for the sky. Yeah. And then after that, I'm gonna do a first coat of this because it's white and I just want to get that on there. Just want to make sure that we can get in all of this. So I'm just gonna do a quick whitish blue. It's kind of turning blue because of my water, and that's totally fine. I'm okay with that. But doing this first coat will allow me to at least get all of the paint on this part of it, because if we need to do a second coat, which I'm pretty sure we will need to, we won't have to worry about covering up the white of the actual canvas. We can just paint. Alright, so super fast. I'm just going to put this light blue kind of here in the middle. And even doing that, you can still see the kind of the middle part of this. So I'm going to go over it with some white. Kind of help that kind of cover up. Alright, so the next time I go through it, that'll be darker and it'll be easier for us to cover up. At this time, because we worked on that, now we can just focus on the mountain. And again, this is not what it's going to look like. This is just kind of a first coat so that we can focus on painting later and not trying to cover up the white of the canvas. Okay, here comes the fun. So this is kind of where you get to kind of choose your own adventure. You get to choose, you can do a sponge if you want to. You can do you can even use a credit card. I've had some people use. You can use a palette knife. I will be using a palette knife. So I'm going to take just my white, and I think I might use, let's see, what palette knife should I use? Use this one, or I think I'm going to use my small one because I feel like I have a little bit more control over it. What you're going to do is you're going to get your paint on the outer part of it, and if you want, you can start at some place where it might not be seen, and you can do it, and if nothing comes off, then you're just going to tilt your hand a little bit further. That's exaggerate, don't do it that much, just a tiny bit, and just keep turning it until the paint starts to grab, or the canvas starts to grab some of it. Okay, and that's kind of what you're doing. And you can also choose where other places are that you want some sun. And just have fun with it. Don't feel like you need to get it perfect on the first try, especially if this is your first time doing it. It can take some work to kind of figure out the you know, the whole process. All right, so what you're gonna do now is you're gonna take a blue, one of your blues that you have, and maybe a little bit of white so it's not so blue. But you're gonna do the same thing except on the other side of the on the other side of the mountain. Sometimes I like to glide it down to get it a little bit more of a consistent snow. But just have fun with it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I am gonna put some snow at the peaks of this, because that just makes sense. And it makes sense that there would be more snow at the top. Alright, I think that's good. I think the snow at the very, very tippy tops of the mountain definitely make a difference. I'm going to put that over here on this side as well. Yeah, I think that looks good. All right, let's keep moving. Let's go ahead and put, I'm actually gonna put a little bit more down here at the bottom. Because I want to be able to see, like maybe there's like some hills. Maybe I can put some hills in. Like there's some, like in the spring they would be hills of, you know, flower fields. But right now they're hills of white snow. Alright, and that is so that we can put in our trees and have kind of like that white background to them. Alright, let's do, I'm going to use this blue, the darker blue that I had for the sky, but I'm going to add a little bit of my black blue to it. I'm going to add a little bit more white to it, just so it's a little bit lighter. Because I got to cancel out the black blue that I just added. Alright, so I'm going to take this brush and I put in some of these trees. And I have, the brush I'm using is a filbert. Putting in just a couple trees here and there. And now that we have, make sure that you go over all the way to where your tree would be. Alright, now that we have that, we're going to make it a little bit darker by adding a little bit more of that black blue. And the first thing I'm going to do is just make a line. And then I'm going to, at the very top of it, just kind of dab my brush, kind of make the top of it look like either little trees or bushes. And it can be uneven, I kind of want it uneven. Now we get to do a second coat of the water. For the water, I'm going to use a slightly lighter color than what I just did to create the initial line. And then I'm going to come down here and make it a lot lighter. And just do a light coat of that blue. While it's still wet, make sure that the edge of it on the top is a little bit darker in the areas that there are dark trees above it, and that will give it the illusion that there's a reflection of those dark trees and dark bushes on the water, and you can leave this area nice and light. After it's dry, we'll go ahead and put on those sparkles, the water reflections, but until then we'll have to wait until it dries. All right, let's do our coat of our second coat of this. I'm gonna go ahead and clean off my thing because I have a lot of colors that I'm mixed once and used once and then didn't really use again. So I'm using a lot of space. Or they're colors that I'm still using but they've dried, so I don't want to put wet paint on top of dried paint. Alright, there's that. That is definitely a plus to having this type of palette, is that I can clean it off whenever I need to. And it is super quick, super simple, super easy, and I can do it in the middle of class and it's great. Okay, so I'm gonna grab some more white. We're gonna mix a little bit of this blue. Alright, so I'm gonna mix together. I have my white. I'm gonna do, so if you look at the pathway, like the snow, there's white, there's blue, and then there's the shadow of these colors. So there's the shadow of the white, which is like a medium blue, and then there's the really dark blue. So there's actually 4 colors of blue in just this section. So we have our white. I'm gonna pull a little bit of this and create my blue. So I'm just gonna grab a little bit of this dark blue and put this in here. See what color we come up with. I think this color is great for the middle tone, in terms of like this middle pathway. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take a little bit of this and put it in this white. This is going to be our shadow white, our shadowed area of white snow. Only the snow that has the bright white on it, that's the part that the sun is in. All the other stuff should have this kind of shadowy white to it. So I'm actually going to do a little bit more of this. Alright, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some of this blue. I think I do need a little bit more of this, so I'm gonna make a little bit more. But what I'm gonna do after making a little bit more is I'm gonna grab it and add just a little bit more of that blackish blue. to make this really dark part right here. And this part is really important to pre-mix because we want to do all of this while it is wet, because that will create that really smooth, almost icy texture that we want. It's really smooth, it's really like really well blended into each other, just like we did at the first time. It was really easy because it was all wet and it was all blended because we did it quick. That's one of the keys to this. So I'm going to take just a little bit of this and add a little bit more blue to it. Okay, and I think that will be a good dark tone. All right, let's get painting. I'm going to use my larger filbert brush because this is quite a large area, and I can always tone it down if I need to change my brush. But for now, I'm going to use the bigger one. The first thing I'm going to do is in the back. I'm going to work from back to front, and I'm going to take my white and just really hone down on this back area. Really get that white in. Alright, and let's go ahead and put on some more of this white. We have some white down here. I'm just going to add white to most of this area, and then we can kind of come in with that slightly off. Maybe there's a little bit of a shadow in here in some places. I'm going to go in with white in this area, but I'm going to go into the dark, my lighter path. Oh my gosh. I did not know that. It's probably because, yeah, everything rattles when I do that. I'm sorry, no, we're not having thunderstorms. Although that would kind of be cool though. Not gonna lie. Alright, once you get paint on your canvas, it's a lot easier to manipulate the color and manipulate the direction. So I'm just gonna I'm gonna go into my shadow color, which is over here. That's like this whole area is my shadow color. And once you get your shadow color in there, then you can come in with your dark. And I'm just gonna go in like a whoosh. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Whoosh. Like back and forth, kind of like in a half moon. Gotta love my scoop. There we go. Kenzie, you always come to my rescue when I forget what words to come in with. Sometimes my husband makes fun, well, not fun of me, but sometimes he kind of laughs at me sometimes because sometimes I create words that sound right, but they're not always like they sound and kind of, they're like almost synonyms, but not quite. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I always like create words that like They kind of sound right, but that's definitely not what that word is for. I do it more often than I would like. And while this is wet, I'm just going to kind of rub in some of this dark while it's wet, and then just kind of brush over it and it'll mix it in. And I honestly think that it could go darker here. So I'm just using, as long as it's wet, I can still work with it. It's when it starts becoming sticky or not really as wet, that's when it becomes a little bit more problematic to work with, and you kind of gotta stop and let it just be. Alright, now I can come in with just my pure white and add any spots that I feel like should be in the sun. Like over here. I'm almost picturing this being kind of like the top of like a ridge, and then it kind of swooping down into like this walking area. It's kind of what I pictured when I was creating it. Paint the underside just so that I don't forget, because I am prone to forgetting this area. Recently got a Stay Wet palette. I love it. I see the advantages of what you have, but I found when I always leftover paint. Yeah. This way it stays wet for like a week or more. Yeah, the problem with, at least for me, for a Stay Wet palette, I mean, granted, I've never had one, but a lot of what I paint, like I mean, I feel like I'm pretty good at judging how much I need and how much I use left. And I'm also a large advocate for like using what's already on the palette instead of getting more paint. Like if I can use what I've already mixed or mix that in, I'll definitely do that before grabbing more. So I've definitely trained myself in that area. And I've also trained myself to kind of like, if it's like for certain things, I'll put less than I think I'll need, so that I can always put more. Obviously, if you're mixing it, then you'll want to try to get more than you think you'll need. But then if I do that, I always try to reuse that paint within the painting. Like this blackish blue, I've been using that to darken everything, even though theoretically, like, it could be a lighter blue, it could be a brighter blue, but I kind of like using that as a tone for the whole painting, because then not only does my paint not go to waste, but it also, I don't have to pre-mix anything anymore. So I've been using that the whole time. So I think, I mean, obviously if you have something that you like, then do that. For me, this is a lot easier because as a teacher, I need to be able to like clean up my space really easily, and I'm painting all the time. So being able to like have an easy cleanup, because I used to use like those like white pot, like it's got like 8 to 10 pots, and they're plastic, and if I didn't clean up as soon as I was done, man, I would spend the next like 20 minutes like soaking it and cleaning it out and trying to get all of the like paint out of it, and it would just soak up my time. And as a mom of 3 kids, I don't have 20 minutes to soak this and scrub it. Like, I want to just be able to, I literally put this in the sink, turn on the water, wait like 10-15 seconds, and then I just scrape it all off, and then I put it away. And it's so easy. Yeah, you move on quick. Yeah, so it's just, yeah. What'd you say? I have left over many because I stopped painting early. Yeah, for sure. If you end up painting a lot and you have to stop in a lot of your paintings, like midway through, or you keep coming back to it, it's like one of those paintings, then yeah, I think that a stay wet painting or a stay wet palette is like a great thing, because then you don't have to remix your paint. It all stays wet. You don't waste paint. I think that they can be great. I try to finish all of my paintings in one sitting, unless it's the cobalt. And in most cases, we choose different paint, because I usually try to finish a section before like closing out a class, for that matter, so that we don't have to like remix the same exact color, because that can be hard. But if you're doing that, if you're painting in spurts, like, oh, I'm going to paint a little bit today, a little bit tomorrow, a little bit the next day, then yeah, stay wet palette makes complete sense. For me, I try to, like, again, most of my paintings I do in classes, so it's all in one sitting. Or in the cobalt, I finish the section before I close it out. So yeah, I don't think I have one painting, I think, that is unfinished, and it's a Spider-Man painting. I started painting it when my son was like 1 or 2. So like 3-4 years ago, maybe. I still have not painted. It was like before we moved, and I was like pregnant. I never finished it. I should finish it. But if I don't finish paintings, they just like don't get done. So I have to do it. Most of my paintings I need to do in one sitting. Anyways, I'm going to stop talking. Yeah, I think every painter has probably had projects that they started with great intentions, and then like a year later they're like, I still need to get back to that. And then they just don't. Okay, making sure all my sides. I missed some pink over here. All right. Let's move on. Let's go ahead and get in our dark. I'm gonna go ahead and first put in I'm gonna go ahead and remix this. I'm gonna add a little bit of black to it, just so that it's a little bit darker, because right now it is very blue, and when it got thin it got very blue. So I'm gonna add a little bit more black to this in hopes that one, I'll have enough and I won't have to remix it, because I have used a lot of it. I'm gonna move it over here so I'm not getting paint with it. I want it pretty much black, but just have like a hint of blue. That's the hope. And a lot of this is going to be black, so I'm not worried about not using this. Okay. The first thing I'm going to do is put in my lines. Now if you want to do this with a smaller brush, that is totally fine. Feel free to do that. So I'm going to put all these in first, and then I can kind of figure out where everything else is going. Alright, so this is where you kind of get to choose your own adventure. I like to use a filbert with this, a specific filbert, because I have two filberts that I like to use, and I try to use all my dabbing with one specific one. I'm sorry for the thunder that is about to happen. I'll hold it so maybe it doesn't go crazy. And I'm mostly focusing on just the tops of this. I'm using the side of the brush, and you're just going back and forth, and then once you get to a certain level, this brush that I use, let me show you what it looks like. This is what it looks like. So it has a bunch of, when I put it down, it puts out a bunch of these little, like, what I like to use for trees, like little branches and little things that hang from it. Gives it that sort of texture, depending on how much paint. And don't feel like you need to cover up all that background. So I start with the corner of my brush and work my way down, kind of tilting my brush like this, kind of scooping back and forth. Alright, so now I'm just going to use the end of my brush to create some texture down here. And even though it's all the same color, I'm going to continue to do it in a dabbing motion because you'll be able to see that texture. You could have a couple pieces like coming out, sticking out. And then you're just going to do the same thing over on this side. Alright, don't forget to paint the sides of your canvas. And I'm also going to do the bottom part. Just so I don't forget later. And I'm not really using any water on this part because I want it to be thick paint. I wanted that to be thick, very opaque, and I want it to have texture. It's kind of part of it. So I have a couple branches kind of coming out from the bushes a little bit. Alright, now that this is all dry, I'm going to take a little bit of let's see. This now has too much black in it for me to reuse as a something to like make something darker. So I'm gonna make just a slightly darker version of this so that I can make some shadow. Just using mostly, with the exception of the darker blue, using the blues that are already on my palette. And using a little bit of a wash, we're just going to darken up some of this area. And I might have to come back over some of this black. Shadow should have been put in before that, but that's okay. Because I can always come back in here and re-put in some of this. All right, let's go ahead and wait for all that to dry. While that dries, let's go ahead and put in our our light spots, our reflection. And I think I might use some tape for this, and that's just so that I can get a really clean line. Just another tool. sure that this is flat. I'm only putting it just on this section. And I want some of this texture, I want some of the texture of the canvas to poke through. That's what is gonna give it its kind of like like kind of sparkly. You can kind of come down with that and add it in other places too, but it's mostly at the top. Just going to kind of dab the canvas a little bit. All right. Yeah, it's turning out really pretty. I like it. All right, we only got a few more minutes. We're gonna put a little bit of snow on this side. So you can put some, it's kind of the same thing. You're gonna put some lighter snow on the left side and darker snow on the right because the sun's coming from the left side. And you can even put some highlights on the parts that the sun is in. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and get I really like using this one for like bushes. I'm gonna use the snow, the same color of snow that I used on this side, the shadow snow. I'm gonna use that for this, and I'm using a brush that is kind of very worn out. It's a flat brush. It's a flat wash brush from Princeton. I've used it for like years and years and years, so I really enjoy using it for like bushes and like that sort of thing, because I can get these like really cool like brush effects. I don't even know what they call them. But it's just a really fun way of adding some texture and kind of like a, yeah, anyways. So I'm just going to use that. What's really important is to not cover up all of your dark, because if you cover up the dark, you're not going to see your light, because it's just all going to be mushy and white. So work from back to front. I only have paint on like the upper half really. Can you then come in with like a cooler color? And yeah, that is pretty much it. I think I'm going to come in with just a little bit of a cooler blue under here. Like that. Yeah, that is pretty much it. We are at the end of our class. Thank you so much for joining me. I cannot wait to see yours. So please, if you are not a part of my Facebook group, I will post a link right now. It's just SamanthaAndersonArtist community group. It is free to join. Go paint yours and then add it to the album. I'll be posting mine in the album within the next 15 minutes. So go ahead and go to that album and then just add it to the album, and then they'll all kind of be in there. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. If you like this content, make sure to like and subscribe, share it. You could either click the link button and then not even share it if you want to, because that helps in the algorithm, but you could also share it to your friends. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. We will see you next week for our watercolor class. I'm looking forward to that. I always love our watercolor classes, even though I still feel like I am a newbie when it comes to watercolor, but because I have a lot of painting experience, I do have a lot of teaching methods and experience when it comes to watercolor because I have so much painting background. That being said, please feel free to join me next week for that class, and yeah, we will see you then. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you next week. Bye guys.